in Exodus chapter number 14. You know the story of the children of Israel. I need not repeat it. That's why I'm not going to read it all, because time is of the essence. But if you go to Exodus chapter 14, verses 30 and 31, you'll hear these words after the children of Israel were delivered. And they said, thus, or Moses wrote this, he said, thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. Remember, he destroyed all of the foes, and they all were drowned in the sea. Remember how the walls of water collapsed on them. And they were on the other side, on dry ground, looking at all the dead bodies that came up on the shoreline. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore, verse 31, and Israel saw that great work which who? The Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people did what? Feared the Lord. That's not a shaking in your boots fear. That is reverence. That's respect. But look who else they feared and respected. And believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So you see the outcome. And you say, well, no doubt. Walls 30 feet, 50 feet high of water. You walking on dry ground. I don't believe they were tripping over rocks either. I don't believe that. It wasn't muddy, or else it wouldn't be dry. They were walking in amazement, looking at what God had done. Look at this. Look at these little children, grandmamas, and everybody. My God, look at this. And then they see all of that collapse. No wonder they respected the Lord and believed in him and his servant. But now you can turn to 15, verse 22. If you're there, say amen. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. That's that same Red Sea we were talking about now. And they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, they named it Marah, which means bitter. And the people did what? Grumbled, murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which, when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Another word for that is tested them. Remember I told you, there's going to be a test, there's going to be a teaching, and there will be a triumph. And the Lord said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. Now, I want you to see here that 3 days after they said, we believe in you, God, we reverence you, Lord, and we believe and reverence Moses. 3 days later, they disbelieved God. And they disbelieved his servant because they complained about him and said, we don't have any water. So I got some questions to ask you, because you're not going to run these people down without putting that finger back at you. How could these Israelites worship on one hand and just 3 days later allow their worship to turn to complaints? And furthermore, why did they complain against Moses? He was just a channel. Before, when they complained against him, he said, y'all shouldn't be complaining against me. You complain against God. I'm paraphrasing. So in actuality, they were not complaining about Moses. He's just a man. They're complaining against God. And so if you look at verse 26, I want you to look at it closely now, because it's pivotal to what we are trying to teach you and how it applies to you. Because before you run these people down, you know as well as I do that you and I have worshiped and jumped and shouted, and that we can remember how God has blessed us. But it don't take too long, hallelujah, before the bloom fades on that rose. Why? Because what have you done for me today, Lord? Don't you see I'm thirsty? Don't you see I don't have any water? Don't you see my little children are famished? Don't you see? Don't you see I'm looking at some people in this church where a young man is right now in the hospital. Young man. The doctors are not all clear of what's going on. Don't you see my grandson? Don't you see my nephew? Don't you see my son? You got another saint in the church who's going through hospitalization, or another one physically challenged in her body. Don't you see? Don't you see that I lost my loved one? Don't you see my pain? But you all know sometimes when we do that, it wasn't too long ago that we were jumping and shouting and say, amen, it wasn't too long ago. So what happened? You know as well as I do that oftentimes our present sufferings overshadow our past victories. We can't see. I might say we don't want to see, because we can see it if we want to, right? But this problem seems to be bigger than the past joy that I had. And after reading verse 26, I really want to get your thinking, because all these people wanted was some water, right? I said, that's all they wanted, right? They said, we want some water. But look what God says. Verse 26. If you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. Why are you saying that, Lord? We're asking for water. And will do that which is right in his sight. We just want some water. And will give ear to his commandments and keep all of his statutes. I'll put none of these diseases upon you. I'm not dealing with diseases, Lord. Just give me some water. Do you think Jesus doesn't know your present situation? Do you think God didn't know they needed some water? Might it be that there's a bigger issue here that God is trying to deal with, and your thirst for water may very well be the test? Somebody's getting this. For you to pass, and I'm using your thirst as a mechanism to move you to another place. Somebody shout hallelujah.